Pat Fitzgerald has been fired as the head coach at Northwestern. And unless you have been living under a rock, you understand why this happened. There was a piece published by the student paper at Northwestern that essentially just exposed all of the horrible details that went into the hazing that was allegedly going on within that locker room. Okay, so let's rewind the tape a little bit. I see the headline come out that Pat Fitzgerald has been suspended for 2 weeks without pay as the head coach at Northwestern for hazing. And you read that headline, and my first thought was like, okay, this whole thing kind of feels just a little bit lackluster, kind of feels like a whatever story. Like, I see he's got 2 week suspension. I'm like, how bad could it really be? We all watch Hard Knocks. We see the rookies sing their song, or maybe you carry pads, like those kind of traditional things that aren't harmful in any way. They're kind of just fun, and in a lot of ways are kind of a part of just, being new to a football team. So that was the first thought, was I don't know what went into that. 2 weeks can't be that bad. Then the report comes out. Then the piece comes out from the student newspaper and just exposed details that were heinous, degrading, inhumane, and your jaw just drops to the floor. If you want to find those details, you can go find them on the student paper piece. I'm not going to unpack them right now, but it was just horrifying and shocking, to say the absolute least. Now, here's the interesting thing. Pat Fitzgerald maintained that he did not know about what was going on in that locker room. Still maintains that. And I understand that there is some conversation around the money that he could get from Northwestern and all that. Like, that's a whole other conversation. Looking at this situation, saying I didn't know is not the correct answer. It's not good enough. Not good enough for me. Wasn't good enough for Northwestern. Shouldn't be good enough for anybody in that locker room. Promise you it's not good enough for Pat Fitzgerald. Because when you're the head football coach, you are responsible for everything within that operation. Nutrition, academics, strength and conditioning, what you do on Saturdays, that locker room, you're responsible for all of it. And saying I didn't know, that is nowhere near good enough. That nowhere near excuses you from your responsibilities of having to take care of what's supposed to go on in that locker room. Think about it this way. You're a CEO. There's a scandal in accounting. I didn't know. Hey, I had no idea about that. Well, guess what? You're still in charge. You're still on the hook for that. If you didn't know, you were supposed to know. We pay you millions of dollars for you to know what's going on within your locker room. And so for this to go on under his watch, I don't have any insight as to Pat Fitzgerald personally, but just the issue here, I don't know, is not good enough. Never was good enough, never will be good enough. In this situation, I think Northwestern did the right thing. And that's not to say, again, I never met Pat Fitzgerald personally, but with the details that came out, for you to oversee this operation, I don't know isn't the correct answer. It doesn't cut it for me. And as soon as these details came out, as soon as everything came out about what happened in those locker rooms, it was over. Like, they fired him last night, but it was over as soon as those details came out. Because what was Northwestern going to do? Going to trot him out there for Big Ten Media Days here on July 26th? Going to have him go sit down and answer questions? I promise you this, there would not have been one football question asked. It would have just been a bloodbath. So that was one option. Could have done that. Let's say you see that through. You say, hey, we're going to stick with Pat Fitzgerald. We're going to let him keep coaching. Do you think any kid is committing to Northwestern after hearing about what is allegedly happening to freshmen? Take it a step further. Do you think any parent in their right mind is allowing their kid to go play for Pat Fitzgerald after figuring out what happened or hearing about what happened within that locker room? There is no shot. And the operation as a whole was already in a tough spot. They were already 0-11 on U.S. soil last year. And Pat Fitzgerald's had some good years at Northwestern, but last year was not one of them. They were 1-11 on the season. Okay, so the program was already in a bad spot, already in a downtrend. You're telling me that's where they're at? And then recruiting, again, reiterating what I just said, probably wasn't going to be in a great place going forward. It would have drawn this whole thing out, and they would have eventually, in my opinion, had to fire him based on performance. So for Northwestern and Pat Fitzgerald, just the whole thing is just an extremely sad situation. Extremely sad situation. What's next for Northwestern? They're going to hire an interim. I would imagine if you're watching this after we're live or hearing this after we're live via podcast, they may have already named interim head coach. But it's going to be a long road back. Because the reality is at Northwestern, they don't have the brand or the resources to recover and hit the reset from a situation like this, I believe, as quickly as maybe other schools would have. Like we saw the whole horrific situation that happened with Penn State. And because of their branding, because of their resources, because of their external circumstances around that operation, they were able to sort of, hit the reset button a little bit quicker. For Northwestern now, it's going to be a long road back. They got to hire somebody who is going to re-energize that whole situation, and not to overuse the word reset button, but they're going to really have to hit that in an emphatic way and find a way to pump some new life, some new values, and create a new system in place at Northwestern. So the whole thing is absolutely tragic. You feel bad for the Northwestern community, but this whole thing was over, in my opinion, as soon as those details came out about what happened in those locker rooms. So again, Pat Fitzgerald is no longer the head coach at Northwestern.
Hey y'all, thanks so much for watching. Subscribe to the channel here to make sure you don't miss an episode of The Hard Count. Also be sure to check out other videos on the On3 YouTube channel.